minutes are almost over.
Okay. Let us now begin with a recap. Hmm?
Okay, sir. So can I start?
Yes.
Good morning, sir, and my dear friends. My name is Tashmia Tabrez. Today I am going to give a recap of 24th of March. Topic is controlling. Before start controlling, sir asks us a questions that explain controls and control and what are the relations of between these two terms. So in very simple terms, controls are the measure through which control is exercised. Control always involve measurements, but controls never involve measurements. Sir, give us example of our parents, that our parents control our behavior. One of the control measure could be that they will say, come back home at by 10 o'clock in the night. You're not allowed to stay out. So this is the paradox of controlling. Actually, the more you try to control, the more it gets out of control. So there will be a principle, sir will explain to us, that is ABC, always better controls. In ABC principle, this principle is one of the most commonly used inventory management methods. Don't control the trivial, control what really matters or brings result. After that, Sir's mother uh, gave him a very beautiful examples when he asked a questions to her. Like the question is that, how is like holding a, how did you ensure such a grooming for your kids? So she said, parenting is like holding your sand in your hand. So if you hold too tightly, the sand slips out of your hand. But if keep your hands open and then you keep that sand in hand, you can control or you can have more amount of sand in your hand. So from this, we need to learn one lesson, that is, don't control everything. What brings best results? After that, sir explained one more principle, that is 80-20 rules. This is applied to all organizations. 80-20 rules means 20% of the efforts and brings 80% of the results. After that, there are three challenges sir shared with us. First is that more control don't necessarily result in better control. Second is controlling human situation is very challenging because very actively control impact the actions it could favorably or adversely. There is a temptation to measure what is easy to measure and not really focus on what should matter, especially in the process of all qualitative dimension of the performance, they get ignored. Other context related to controlling is that there is always a relations of controlling with planning. So at planning stage, we decide to standard a performance. After then we measure the performance, then we see their variance. In this, there are three possibilities sir will explain with us, that is, there could be a positive deviations, there could be a negative deviations, and third is that their performance could match the standard. So that's all. Thank you.
Do we have another volunteer also?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good morning, sir. So I'll start with my introduction. Uh, just a second. Yeah. So I'll start with my introduction. My name is Mohammad Chavez Khan, and I'm a student of Slavic Banking and Finance. So I've been working in digital marketing field for past 4 years professionally, and I work for the brands like Mother Dairy, Pacific Mall Delhi, Pacific Mall Dehradun, Oppo Mobile, then Volvo India, and nine sanitary pads, Athleo pads, sorry, Athleo shoes, and all. And since I got to know that in this field I need MBA, so I decided to pursue MBA from a Indian Muslim university. And this new combination, that is my knowledge, practical knowledge of digital marketing, and the branch which I chose, that is Islamic banking, would be can be a good combination, a new combination to work with. And I'm hoping to discover something new out of this combination. Starting with the recap, so we began with a question, that is control and control. So you asked what is the difference between these two, and the answer was that controls are the measures to which control is exercised. And then you gave an example that parents they want to control a limit, such as going out or coming back to home by 10, or setting up the routine or timetable to this for the students or for their kids. Uh, so that is something called controlling of a kids, right? Then you ask, if you have more control, does it lead to better control? So the answer was, the more you control things, the more it goes out of hand or out of control. Then we got to know there is a principle, ABC, always better control. So if you try to control the trivia, let's say we watch our employees or our kids, their movement or their performance via, we set up a time limit or put a stopwatch, then that creates a negative impact, and the word controlling goes negative in our mind. Then you gave a choice, that if you had a choice, you would have used the word monitoring rather than the word controlling, since controlling has been considered a negative word in the society. So there was this mother who gave you an example. You asked her, how does she ensure grooming of her kids? So she told you that parenting is like sand. Like the harder you, I mean, the more you tighten your grip, it, it slips out of your hand. So it's up to you that how much you have to, tighten your grip, and it's a very, very, risky thing, and but you have to learn how much you have to grip or tighten your grip to hold the sand and control your kids. Then you gave another example to justify that control what brings best result. So there is a principle called 80-20 principle. All organizations have it. So 20% of the efforts brings 80% of the results. Then you recall your summer training at Tom Cook in your MBA days, the Tata Group company. So they had this soap called OK. It was contributing almost 60% of the sales coming out of the toilet soaps category. So basically, the company was focusing on the OK soap only, and to tackle the competitors like Lifebuoy during that time. Then we have a discussion over the controls. That controls are neither objective nor neutral, especially when it comes to humans. For example, how controlling is different in physical world and the human world, where people are being controlled.
Chavez,
So
please
share
adjust.
your experience
Chavez,
of,
please
yeah, you
adjust your
can.
camera. Adjust your camera, please. Camera and speaker both. There is some problem, especially with the speaker. Your voice is getting feeble at times. Too low. Okay, now please start.
So I can't hear you. Just hello.
Yes, please start.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Now your voice is clear.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So you shared your experience of your student days. So there was this English teacher in your class. So one fine day you noted that suddenly your teacher shifted his gears and started talking, giving poetic quotations, and he started, quoting different poems, and you really liked his poetic expositions. I mean, you were really impressed, but and you guys were surprised as well. So later, you guys got to know that the vice chancellor of AMU, the university, entered your class from the back door, and he sat down on the back benches. The teacher saw him coming, and because of it, this impacted his performance, and he improvised at the same time just to when the vice chancellor entered the class. Then on the other hand, your brother, who too was a student of the university, he too shared a different, I would say, uh, incident. So in his political science class, his teacher who was a primarily a good teacher. So he was teaching, and suddenly again the vice chancellor out of nowhere he entered his class and sat down just to be basically during that time the vice chancellor used to go to the classes randomly just to monitor and check how the teachers are performing. So he sat behind the students, and this presence of VC created so much of nervousness that the teacher he started stammering, or he was so nervous that students suddenly couldn't understand what is happening. He has been teaching so well, and now what? Why he's so nervous? So your brother, including your brother and other students, they started asking questions to him, and so the teacher came back to his original phase, and he started, he was very thankful to the students that they made him comfortable. So so the third challenge of controlling, you asked, how can you judge a teacher? So you asked the measures out of it. So finally, we came out to the conclusion that publication record. So if there are any publications, then citations. So through publication records, we judge a teacher, but that shouldn't be the measure on priority. I guess teachers performances, teachers how students can approach, or teacher skills can also be the one of the measures to judge a teacher. But we end up measuring what is easy to measure rather than what should be, what matters. So I'll conclude this. So we learned three challenges. First was the more controls do not necessarily result in better control. Second was controlling human is a challenging situation because the act of controlling impacts the action, preferably and adversely. And the third was temptation. The measure what we measure to measure what is easy is to I mean we measure only what is easy rather than what matters. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so we had good recaps. Although in terms of content, there were some gaps. Like for example, Chavez, you covered the points very well. Especially the summary part was very good.
Thank you, sir.
But we did talk about the relation between controlling and planning, and we talked about the control process, in which we talked about how do we set standards at the planning stage, then we measure the performance, and then we find three situations, possible situation, which is there could be a positive deviation or a negative deviation or no deviation. And we discussed the example how chairman monitors, for example, the progress in various courses. So that part was not covered. And otherwise, Chavez, you speak with understanding. You have a very unique style of communicating, which is mostly conversation based,
Yeah.
which is a good style to hone and develop.
Thank you,
But
sir.
work a bit more on the flow, because what happens is that when we speak like this and we are not that fluent,
Yeah.
generally when there are gaps, we try to fill them through fillers.
Yeah.
And those fillers could be like so they have no actually meaning, but they somehow creep into our communication.
Yeah.
So if you can smoothen your delivery further, it will be a very impactful style.
Understood, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. And Tasmia, you can take a leaf out of Chavez's presentation. Uh, the presentation, you covered the points very well, and it was a good coverage. But the presentation ended a bit abruptly. Hmm. So earlier we have discussed this idea that every presentation should have three distinct parts. One, which we presented like this: okay, tell them what you are going to tell them. Then tell them. So we develop the main body. And then third, tell them what you have told them. So there should be three distinct parts in the presentation. Okay? The intro, the main body, and then finally the summary. Okay. So if you have three distinct parts, otherwise your language wise you are very comfortable and you covered the content very effectively, except for this last part, which was to me a bit abrupt. Hmm. That would be focused.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
And also the earlier also I've talked about this issue, especially in the online kind of presentation, the location of the facilities. For example, if you have light coming from behind, then your face is not very clearly visible. So make sure that you take a position so that there is light on your face and we can see the face clearly.
Okay, sir.
Like for example, if you look at Chavez uh, position, is the main part, that is face, we call is the index of man. So face should be bright, clear, visible. Then it makes an impact on it. So these minute things, they can, if addressed, they add to effectiveness. So, but otherwise, well done. Both of you have done a good job.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So, Zareen ma'am, over to you now.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay. So today we can discuss what are the types of controls, since you have discussed previously the uh, process and the designing process. So today we can discuss what are the different types of control which could be used in organization to monitor, to check how the organization is performing. And sometimes um, it is also called as a thumb rule of 80-20. Generally, in an organization, 80% of output is dependent on 20% of specific activities only. This suggests that we should focus more on these 20 specific activities more in order to bring maximum output. And because these 20% of the activities are crucial activities, so these are more important than the rest of the activities. And it is also important to identify which are these 20% of the activities which are crucial in bringing 80% of the output or most of the output in the organization. And we may ignore and try not to control the rest of the 80% of the activities, because most of those activities are trivial in nature, and too much of controlling of those activities is, or too much controlling of anything is not very good, right? So our major focus should be on the key areas which are important for bringing output in any organization. Instead, we must try to do a value setting to, for example, other than controlling activities in the organization, it is also important to bring self control as well, right? So instead, we must try to do some value setting to inculcate self control within the employees, within ourselves. And there is one famous author and businessman whose name is Stephen Covey, who had suggested that we must pursue 4 L's towards self and personal control. So for our personal control, we will come to the control. How can we control the output and all in organizations, the that aspect as well. But this area is also important, that how to add value to ourselves, and how to do value setting to inculcate self control within ourselves, within our employees. So Stephen Covey had suggested 4 L's to pursue to be pursued towards self control, or towards, we can say, personal control. So he suggested how to live. He suggested how to learn. L, live, learn, love, how to love, and how to leave a legacy behind. So if we learn that how can we live, and how can we spend our lives, how can we learn, through what activities we can learn, that our learning is long lasting and valuable, and how can we love our work, and how can we spread love among ourselves, and what activities can we do, or what interest we can pursue, that we leave a legacy behind, which could be followed, or which could be you know um, kind of set an example. So this would definitely bring control among employees, if these areas are defined, or these areas are set. Okay, and now we come to the whole organizations. So now if we talk about whole organizations, each organization has its own policy to control, has own control policy, and key result areas. Key result areas are the those that 20% of the areas which are to be focused upon, majorly focused upon. So all the organizations have these key result areas which they mainly focus upon to bring maximum output. So let us discuss what could be the different control points, what could be the different types of controls which could be practiced in different functional areas within organization. For example, we can talk about in production. Very quickly we will discuss in production, marketing, human resource, and finance. Okay, so if we talk about production control, I'm sure you are you have gone through operations paper. So when we talk about production control, the key indicators used for measuring and comparing the output could be the quantity produced, right? The quantity produced may be the quantity produced in financial, in X financial year and in Y financial year, that could be compared, right? So that could be a base to monitor, that could be a base to measure the performance of the organization. So quantity produced could be there. The quality of production could be one aspect. And more significantly, the efficiency and cost effectiveness could be another aspect to check, to monitor the production process in an organization. For example, per unit cost. If the per unit cost in the maybe last year was lower, and now the per unit cost has increased, so this could also be a way that an organization could monitor its production area, the functional area, that is production. Okay, so these could be the production controls which could be uh, taken care of, and through which the production could be monitored. Then marketing controls. In marketing, the important indicator could be the anybody suggest what could be the important indicator in the marketing, through which we can understand, we can compare our marketing efforts from the previous year or any other time period? Yes, anyone? One of the important indicators could be the amount of sales, right? The amount of sales. If the amount of sales in the previous year was X, and in the next year it is X plus one, then of course the marketing efforts are better. But if it is X minus one in the next year, or in the in the future, then it means that the when they are monitoring or when they are comparing the 2 years, then they would be able to see that why the sales have declined, or maybe what is the reason behind that. So this could be one aspect through which the functional area, the marketing, could be assessed. Then there is brand reach, that to how many people they are able to reach. So that is also one of the way to assess. Also, another way could be the market share value, right? Market share value, if it has increased, or if it has decreased. So it also helps in assessment of the. It could also act as a control point in the functional area marketing. Okay. Now, if we see the functional area human resource, then is there any suggestion from your side that what could be the control HR controls? Any any idea? Even if you are not very correct, that doesn't matter. Just try.
Ma'am, can you please repeat the question?
Okay. Like we discussed the functional area production, we discussed the functional area marketing. Similarly, we have the functional area human resource management. Okay, so what could be the control point? I mean, what could be the way to assess if the functional area human resources are is has functioned better than the previous year, or if the uh, how can we monitor the human resource? For example, if we are employee of an organization, so how could we assess any I'm sure you have studied in human resource management many ways to assess the uh, the function area. Okay, so what is absenteeism? Anybody know absenteeism?
Ma'am, as far as I remember, when the employees go on leave without informing, I feel.
Okay, so when they are not present, when they are just absent from their work, when they just just kind of disappearing from their work, then we can call that it is absenteeism, right? When they are not present. Simple, as the word suggests. So if the absenteeism is increasing, for example, if the number of employees exhibiting absenteeism in say 2021 is more than in the previous year, then it means that there is a need to check this functional area, that why is it happening. There is need to monitor, there is need to bring some controls so that the absenteeism could go high or low.
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 Low, yes. So that the level of absenteeism decreases, so that the human resource, the manpower could be could feel more satisfied at work, and they can they can they cannot go on leave without without any notification, or just stay absent from their work. So there must be a reason behind that. Could be their boss, could be colleagues, could be the nature of work, could be maybe working hours, anything. So there's a need to understand that what is the basic reason behind that. Same way, there are satisfaction surveys among employees which are done. So employees are actually, they have to fill in a survey in which they are asked, in which there are statements which they have to respond, and the organization could is able to assess their level of satisfaction. So if the level of satisfaction is high, if it is moderate, or if it is okay, then fine. But if the level of satisfaction is low, then the organization needs to take some step, need to bring some measures, some controls are required to understand that why is there such dissatisfaction among employees, and to address that issue, right? Okay. Similarly, there's another HR controls, which could be manpower cost. The organization may also assess the cost incurred on a single employee. For example, when any new employee is recruited, there is a training, there is a kind of some cost which is incurred by the employer. So that is also need to be assessed, if that cost is going high, or and if it is going high, is the organization able to take that much of a benefit from the employee. So these could be the HR controls which could be taken care of in an organization to monitor, to assess the human resources, and to manage their human resources well. All right. I hope I'm able to explain. So, the last but not the least functional area is finance. So there are financial controls, which are the most important key features to measure the performance of an organization, and to monitor the performance of the organization, and to take corrective actions. So how do we analyze the financial health of a, let's say, of a commercial organization? What do you suggest?
Profits.
Okay. Okay, good. Profits, but is there any way in which we can, like, how do you see profits? Where do you see profits? Where is there any document which exhibits profits, which display the
PL account or balance sheet.
Okay, yes, very good. The profit loss statement and balance sheet. Very good. Yes, so balance sheet is, that is, we are matching the assets with capital and liabilities, and profit loss statement, that is calculation of profit and loss from from revenue and expenses. So these are most commonly used financial statements, the standardized uh, way to um, to assess the profits, the loss in accounting practices, right? So some of the important indicators of financial controls are the Ratio analysis techniques. Ratio analysis techniques. Should I mention in the chat box? Ratio analysis techniques. Okay. So ratio analysis techniques is one of this is a an important indicator of a financial controls which we perform on the data of financial statement. So once we have the balance sheet, once we have the profit loss statement, we perform ratio analysis techniques on the data available on these financial statements. So quickly we will go through these ratios. So one is profitability ratio. Any idea profitability ratio? In simple terms, we are not going in detail, just the idea.
Ma'am, the
Mom, which
ratio.
tells us about the financial health of the
जी
company.
हाँ वो तो है, हम जो
And
डिस्कस कर रहे हैं उसे फाइनेंशियल हेल्थ ही बता रहे हैं कंपनी का, बट थोड़ा सा स्पेसिफिक प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी
and
रेशियो. जी
gross
सर.
profit ratios, net profit ratios, all those things.
Yes, ma'am. Gross profit margins and net profit margins, etc.
Okay, okay.
Ratio as it is.
The return on investment
Exactly, exactly,
ratio.
exactly. Profitability ratio, it suggests the ability of an organization of getting maximum return on investment. Simple. Okay, and it should ideally be more than 10%. So basically, profitability ratio, it suggests the ability of an organization of getting maximum return on investment. Simple. Okay, so this is one of the ratio analysis technique. The another ratio analysis technique is the solvency ratio or the liquidity ratio. So anybody can try liquidity ratio, as the name suggests, liquidity.
Current ratios.
Just what does it suggest? What does it mean? Not
Basically the cash flow.
yes, yes. Right. Thank you, Adil and Umar. So solvency ratio and liquidity ratio, it suggests the ability of an organization to liquefy its assets when required, right? As Adil and Umar, you just very correctly mentioned that if the ability of is high of an organization liquefy its assets as and when required, then it means that it has high liquidity ratio. Uh, and otherwise, it means that so these could be the ways to assess the performance of an organization, to assess and to monitor that maybe liquidity ratio was high and could be compared from the previous year, right? And in the balance sheet, in the profit loss statement as well, these financial statements, these all of course the data, through data we are able to get these ratios, and these display, exhibit the profits and you know all the values, equity, all the values which could be compared from the last year and previous years. So this is a way we can monitor the financial performance of an organization. Okay, very quickly, two more ratios. So we have activity ratio. Any idea activity ratio? What does this suggest?
Turnover ratios,
Okay, yes. Turnover ratio, but what turnover ratio? Which
fixed
turnover
asset,
ratio?
fixed
Ji?
asset, fixed asset turnover ratio, like
Uh-huh.
Inventory turnover ratio.
Yes, yes, exactly. Who said that?
Ma'am, Palaksh.
Palaksh. Very good, Palaksh. It is inventory turnover ratio. Activity ratios, basically, it is in which the inventory turnover ratio suggests the ability of a company to convert its inventory into sales as quickly as possible. Okay, so they have inventory, but how fast they are able to convert the inventory into sales, that is their activity ratio. Okay, so activity, as the name again suggesting. So the last ratio which we can just quickly talk about is leverage ratios. Leverage ratio, Palaksh.
It refers to the change capital and equity
Capital.
and debt.
Yes, they tell about the mix of debt and
Hmm, hmm,
equity.
hmm. Right, right. Thank you. So leverage ratio is in which maybe there's a debt ratio which suggests that the amount of debt a company is holding at a given time, and definitely it should not be too much. The debt should not be too much. So basically, these are some of the financial indicators, some of the financial controls indicators. There are many more, like there are budgetary controls. There are related to revenue. There are many, but these are some prominent financial controls indicators which are measured, which are analyzed to judge, to assess, to understand the performance of financial performance, and also related to production, related to marketing, related to HR, the performance of an organization, and also to conform control parameters. So as to work against the negative deviation, right? And to analyze the positive deviations as well, so that the negative deviations could be understood then, and they can work to address those issues, and also to analyze their positive deviations. I hope you know deviation. So we discussed about in the ways to control, we discussed about the four L's towards self control and personal control. Then we came to the whole organization, and we discussed about the control points in different functional areas, the production, marketing, HR, and then finally we discussed the financial controls, where we discussed the balance sheet, profit loss statement, and how this data can be analyzed, and we can reach to the ratio analysis techniques, the profitability, solvency or liquidity, activity ratio, and the leverage ratio. So I hope I'm able to explain. Um, Sir, would you like to please add some input, sir? Sir, your mic is muted, sir.
You have covered both the points broadly. Maybe in next class we may talk about the pre-controls and the concurrent controls and the feed forward controls, the post controls that we use. So that could be types of controls. As regards financial controls, I think you have covered all the important ratios, and actually primarily there are the broad category of ratios, like Zareen ma'am started the discussion with profitability ratios. Suppose I have I make a sale of 100 rupees, and Zareen ma'am also, for example, suppose applique work she is involved in, and she makes a sale of 100 rupees, suppose, and 90% has gone into cost, and 10% is what she has got. So, likewise, you should be able to bring your understanding to that simple level what profitability ratios are. So, if she makes a sale of 100 rupees and she earns 10 rupees out of it, and if I make a sale of 100 rupees and I get only 5 rupees, so my profitability is 5%, her profitability is 10%. Isn't it? Then somebody talked about the gross profits and net profits. Yes, when what is this 5 and what is this 10? Now 10, maybe there are some expenses which we have not accounted for, especially, for example, tax related expenses. So if we have not, or some interest payment that is due, suppose I have borrowed those 100 rupees and I have to pay an interest on that. So my profitability, net profit is after you have deducted the interest and taxes. That is what is your net profit. Likewise, you have investments related, what you call ROI. ROI is an important ratio. Why? Because it shows how productively you are able to utilize your assets. But again, there is a flip side also. There is a balance which is required. For example, if I have an investment of 100 rupees and I get 10 rupees out of it, but suppose I get 35 rupees out of it, is that a very healthy situation? Naturally, if I was earning 10 and I started earning 35, you will say that my profitability is very good. My return on investment is very high. But sometimes what happens is when we focus too much on investments or too much on utilizing our assets, there is a problem also. In fact, it is said that Bhopal gas tragedy primarily occurred because of heavy emphasis on ROI. They were given that belief that they have to squeeze their assets like anything so that they can earn as much as they can. And in the process, they compromised on preventive maintenance, they compromised on necessary refurbishing investments that are required. And as a result, the machinery started, deteriorating. And one day that leak occurred, and finally it killed so many people. It was one of the worst industrial disasters that we have had. So the point is, everything is good in balance. So yes, return on investment is important, but my teacher also used to say that any business which earns above 20% return on investments is inherently unsustainable. He would say it should be steady and consistent. So likewise, we know the concepts, but we have to bring the understanding of those concepts to a practical level, so that we genuinely appreciate what are these ratios. And it would be a good practice to refer to balance sheets and profit and loss statements of various organizations, especially if you are contemplating joining a summer training organization. Now all these documents, the annual reports, are in public domain. So whenever you are in the process of finalizing a summer training organization, make sure that you study their balance sheet very carefully, and that will give you an idea whether the organization is inherently financially stable organization or it is not that stable. And that idea you can get from the ratio analysis which Zareen ma'am was talking about. Broadly, the profitability ratios, then the liquidity ratios, liquidity both short term and long term. What she talked about, the ratio between current assets and current liability. Then the debt equity ratio, how the funds have been arranged. Is it primarily through debt or is it through equity? Then activity ratios she talked about, again third category of ratios. So if you have an idea about these broad category of ratios and have been able to analyze couple of organizations, you will be able to understand the financial health of the company, and that way you can make wise choices, whatever choices you have. For example, if the choice is to select your summer training organization, which is a stable organization. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.